Welcome back to the American Presidency Unfiltered, the show where we peel back the layers of presidential history and discover the quirks, contradictions, and surprising stories of the men who've occupied the Oval Office, or in today's case, the candlelit desks of the early 1800s. I'm your host, Brad Pitzl, and today's episode is all about Thomas Jefferson, the man who penned the Declaration of Independence, founded the University of Virginia, loved a good wine, and practically ghosted America once he became president. That's right, Jefferson gave only 2 speeches as president, both inaugurations. The rest of the time, he let his pen do the talking. No State of the Union speeches to Congress, no fireside chats, no good evening, my fellow Americans, not even a weekly tweet. In fact, if Jefferson were around today, his idea of public communication might be dropping a very detailed, very polite Substack once a year. So why was Jefferson so quiet? And could his silent presidency actually teach us something about leadership? Let's find out. Today's episode is brought to you by politicaltradingcards.com. Grab a piece of history with the latest trading cards from the left and the right. politicaltradingcards.com. First, let's set the scene. It's 1801. Jefferson takes the oath of office, and instead of booming oratory like George Washington or John Adams, he delivers a fairly calm inaugural address. He stresses unity, saying we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists. That's a nice line, by the way, if you're ever trying to keep a group chat from imploding. But after that, crickets. Jefferson believed that presidents should govern with restraint and avoid anything that looked like monarchy. Remember, this was the guy who detested pomp and circumstance. He even walked to his own inauguration rather than ride in a fancy carriage. That's like the modern day president saying, forget the limo motorcade, I'll just grab an Uber. Instead of speaking directly to Congress or the people, Jefferson sent written State of the Union messages. Congress had the clerks read them aloud. This was deliberate. He thought speeches encouraged too much theatrics. In other words, Jefferson was worried about politics turning into show business. Cue the laugh track for modern times. Now contrast Jefferson's style with what we see today. Presidents now practically come with their own media channels. Franklin Roosevelt gave fireside chats over the radio. John F. Kennedy mastered television with his charisma and that perfect hair. Ronald Reagan was called the great communicator, and Barack Obama could hold a rally like a rock star. And today, politicians are tweeting, live streaming, podcasting, and some are probably considering a TikTok dance challenge. Jefferson would have fainted, or at least quietly written a 10-page essay about how it was undignified. Just imagine Jefferson on X. My fellow Americans, avoid foreign entanglements. #no drama. Can't believe Hamilton dropped another diss track in the Federalist Papers. #undignified. It just doesn't fit. His silence wasn't laziness, it was intentional. He believed democracy worked best when leaders stepped back and allowed institutions and the people to do the talking. In a world where leaders are constantly broadcasting, maybe Jefferson's ghost is shaking his head thinking, this is exactly what I warned you about. So was Jefferson onto something? In some ways, yes. Silence can be powerful. It forces people to focus on ideas, not personalities. Imagine if modern politics were a little quieter. Fewer sound bites. Fewer photo ops. Maybe even fewer tweets at 3 a.m. Plus, Jefferson's approach freed him from the gaffes and controversies that come with constant media exposure. No embarrassing hot mic moments. No memes of awkward handshakes. Just carefully crafted, written messages. In today's terms, Jefferson would have had the best press secretary ever. Microsoft Word. Of course, silence has its limits. Communication builds trust, and Jefferson sometimes came across as a little bit aloof or inaccessible. But his presidency reminds us that leadership isn't always about who talks the loudest. Here's the million-dollar question. Could Jefferson's silent style really work today? Probably not. Voters expect presidents to be visible, relatable, and available 24/7. A silent presidency in 2025 would get roasted on late night TV faster than you could say approval ratings. But maybe we don't need a complete silent president, just less noise. Imagine a president who spoke only when it really mattered, cutting through the chatter with clarity. Maybe Jefferson was onto a timeless truth. Leadership isn't just about the number of words you say, but the weight they carry. So there you have it, Thomas Jefferson, the American president who basically invented ghosting. Not on Tinder, but on the entire American public. His silence was intentional. His restraint was philosophical. And his quirky style might actually have lessons for our noise-filled political world today. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed today's dive into Jefferson's silent presidency, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with a friend who thinks politics could use a little less talk and a lot more action. I'm Brad Pitzl, and until next time, remember, sometimes silence really does speak louder than words.